Hi, Anthony, and welcome to Entrepreneurcast. It's such a great pleasure to have you with us today.
Oh, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I can't wait to get chatting.
So, Anthony, before we get going with the business side of things, tell us a little bit about who are you outside of your business and what do you enjoy doing in your spare time?
Oh, even when I'm not on stage being the telephone assassin, I suppose I'm still the telephone assassin. I'm just Ant, as my missus knows me. I like playing golf. I like watching movies and spending time with her and being at home. Obviously, get to travel quite a bit with work, so being home is actually sometimes something that I really enjoy doing and curling up on the sofa and watching a movie. So yes, I still tend to run the same ethos that I talk about on stage through my personal life. So I spend a lot of time on the phone with people and avoid texting and emailing as much as I can.
Amazing. So, what about your business? What is your, telephone assassin? What's that about?
The telephone assassin is kind of a nickname I got a few years ago. So to tell you kind of how I got to where I am today in the quick version is the last time I had a proper job, so to speak, I was employed about 12 years ago by Thomson Directories. And I used to sell a data profiling tool that help people to buy a database that they could target as part of their marketing. I used to pitch it that I was actually selling people their wish list of clients as opposed to big databases. Some of my clients asked me to write telesales scripts and give them advice on what to send as a warm-up or a follow-up to their campaigns. So I started giving a bit of advice, and then once enough of them asked me if I would make the calls for them, I took that giant leap into being self-employed and started to make calls for people. And the gist of it was I did campaign-based work to begin with, so following up after specific events or on certain campaigns that companies were running, and they quickly turned into being retainer clients. So I got to the stage where I was either the sales or marketing manager for 5 different SMEs all at the same time, and then I started to build a waiting list of clients because it's a popular service that not many people can do very well. And my accountant asked me a really valuable question, which is, how much money do you make out of a waiting list? Which made me stop and think, and he suggested that I took people to fit for themselves rather than doing it for them. So I did a couple of workshops, and I teamed up with an NLP master practitioner, that's neuro-linguistic programming. So he was great, taught me a lot about running workshops, how to facilitate the day, but most importantly, he taught me that it wasn't just my structure I was using that was why I was so powerful on the phone, it was my communication style. And that opened my eyes to the tiny little differences on the phone, particularly when you're trying to teach somebody to do it for themselves. So I began running workshops. I was quickly asked to come and speak at an event, and they offered me 2 days training money for a 40-minute talk, which I was gobsmacked for. I offered extra training, and they said, no, we just need a keynote. And once I realized that was out there, my wife very kindly signed me up to a speaking competition through the PSA, which is the Professional Speaking Association. I went along there, went to their first mega conference, met some amazing people, and they turned me into an international speaker. I got invited to South Africa. I started networking and hanging out with some amazing professional speakers who I've really looked up to and have helped me throughout my business. So that's kind of how I got to become the telephone assassin, I suppose. But much of my business now, although the speaking is great and that's where the glory is, it's actually a lot of it's in the training side of things, because that's where you can accelerate the learning process by running interactive sort of workshops with people. And it also gives me an opportunity to pick up the phone and make a few live calls as part of the training sessions. So that's often nice, and it tends to be the light bulb moment where many people clap like it's a magic trick when I first put the phone down, and then you can see them kind of going, oh my god, it really is that easy, I could do that. And it's a lovely moment. So yeah, that's kind of how I got to where I am, and yeah, that's how the telephone assassin bit came about, I suppose.
Amazing. And what would you say inspired you to start it? Because it's quite a transition from working for somebody to actually starting your own thing and deciding to do that exact thing. So what inspired you to start in your business?
I don't know. I just think it was perhaps a moment of stupidity or bravery where I had enough people out there that I knew needed something that I could do for them and were willing to pay for it. And I think I just got to the stage where I was ready to take the plunge, and I had a handful of clients in my pocket to launch myself into the business, and a very realistic understanding that I needed to find more clients as well as service the clients I already have. So yeah, I'm not sure if it was bravery or stupidity, but I've never looked back. It's such an honor to be able to work for yourself. It's more stressful than having a job. You could probably earn more money in a job as well. But when your job and your business is kind of your passion, that keeps the fire in your belly and gets you hungry to want to go out there and kind of change the world, put your little stamp on it, and try and rub off any expertise you've got that you know could help other people. So hopefully that answers the question.
Anthony, what would you say your typical day looks like?
Oh, well, it was a typical day in the office or a typical day out on the road, because typically if I'm in the office, I'm usually playing catch up. So I'm usually up here by around 7:30, checking emails, responding, doing stuff that I need to do, usually around the admin sort of area of my business, because it's the time where I'm not getting phone calls coming in. So you don't get little distractions. Personally, I get a little bit absorbed and excited when I get into a conversation, so I can lose quite a few hours in a day by random phone calls coming in or calls going out that go really well. So I do have to be careful. But yeah, I try and make sure that I've got an office upstairs in my house. So this is Assassin HQ, but I'm up in the attic, I suppose. It's good to have a designated workspace where you can shut the door and be at work, because with other people in the house, you might be there, but you are still at work, and it's lovely to sit and have a cup of tea and what have you with your other half or others that are maybe around the house. But you do need to get focused and make sure that you get the work done, shall we say. If it's a day out on the road, typically they tend to start pretty early as well. I always arrive to any gig, whether it's a speaking gig or a training engagement, at least 30 or 60 minutes before the time I've told the organizer I'm going to be there, which has usually already got a buffer in it. This is purely because there is often issues with AV and setup and last minute problems when you go to events or you turn up at venues, and it's nice to be there in plenty of time to keep everybody calm, to be able to fix certain AV issues as a speaker, getting your laptop all plugged up and using a host computer, that kind of stuff, and just trying to make sure that for me, if I'm going to an event, I want the organizer to know that I'm there not just for my talk, but for the whole day usually. So I try and do a bit of a meet and greet at the beginning. I make an effort to sort of move around at lunchtime and do a bit of networking too. I tend to try and tweet and do some posts as well on behalf of clients, particularly if they're running events, because at the end of the day, they want to make noise on social media, and that's what we use social media for business. It's to create amplification of our message. So we need our followers to like, share, retweet in order to help us make lots of noise. So yes, the glamorous side that everybody thinks is that I do end up spending quite a bit of time in hotels, but unless it's a spa hotel and I'm able to take my wife with me, eating alone in a hotel and the novelty of a hotel breakfast wears off after a while. But I love traveling around. It's exciting to work with new companies and all over the place and outside of the UK as well. So yeah, that's kind of my typical days if I'm in or out of the office. But much of it's spent on the phone, if I'm honest with you, talking to people. There we go.
So, throughout our entrepreneurial and business journey, we come across a lot of challenges as entrepreneurs. What would you say was your greatest challenge, and how did you manage to overcome it?
Oh, the greatest challenge, I think, as being your own boss and being a business owner is probably focus. It's very easy to get absorbed in the running and the day-to-day delivering of your product or service and getting involved in the business, whereas stepping back and actually trying to make a bigger picture plan and a strategy can be tough when you're on your own. You don't always have somebody to bounce the ideas off. So one thing I learned at the PSA was actually joining a mastermind group can be a really valuable asset to any business owner, purely because it gives you a nice, safe sounding board, but also people that will hold you accountable to what you said you're going to be doing. So that, I think, is something that a lot of us do have to overcome. There's lots of distractions and nice things that you can do at home. Close the blind because it's sunshine, it's beautiful out there. I want to go and sit in the garden. I can make calls out there. So yeah, so I think getting yourself focused and trying to get into a routine is part of the challenge, which eventually you kind of go into a bit of a cycle every now and then, and you get out of it, you get a bit lazy, kick yourself up the backside, excuse my language, and get yourself to pull your socks up and get on with it. Because the beauty of being a boss is that you can take as much holiday as you want. The down point is you won't be paid while you're on holiday, so to earn the money if you want to enjoy the spoils. So yeah, probably focus and discipline, I think, is probably one of the bigger challenges that I probably struggle with ongoing, because I think we all get a bit complacent every now and then.
So how do you actually manage to discipline yourself and to maintain that focus when you need it?
So from a diary management perspective, I tend to block out windows of time in my diary to do certain tasks. If I do that, then typically if it's written in my physical diary, because I'm a bit old school, I have a digital diary as well, but a physical diary, I tend to then put 2 or 3 things that I want to achieve within that time, and I'm a bit of a stickler for wanting to tick things off my to-do list. So a bit of diary management can massively help, but I think we've all at some point done that extra thing that wasn't on our to-do list that just so happened to fall in our lap, that we then do and add to our to-do list with a tick already next to it as well. But yeah, I think a little bit of diary management can definitely go a long way, but also you need to look after yourself and have space. You do get away from your computer as well, because I think you do have to get the balance right, and stopping to have a bite to eat is something that I don't always do, but I try to. Got to look after your body, because unfortunately that your health is going to dictate your wealth, so you got to look after yourself as well.
Definitely. Health is like the most important thing for, if you don't have health, you can't run your business, you can't do anything. So I'm with you on that. So Anthony, what would you say within, obviously you've been in the business for 12 years, and what would you say was your biggest success within your business?
I think there's been a few sort of milestones along the way. But there's one event in particular that will always be kind of fond in my heart, which was about 18 months ago. I spoke at the Made Entrepreneurs Festival up in Sheffield, and it was at the City Hall. There was about 1,500, 1,800 people in the room. The speaker lineup was amazing. I got to meet JB Gill from JLS. We had Nigel Risner, Jeff Ram. There was some amazing speakers, and it was one of the first events where there was a proper green room filled with celebrities. Everybody around the place knew who we were. We were up on posters around the town, on all of the bus stops. I kind of felt like a celebrity, and I've got no desire to be a celebrity. However, there is an element as a speaker where you'd like to be kind of a business celebrity. You want to turn up at the conference and people know who you are, have bothered to look you up, have watched a couple of your videos, that kind of stuff. So that was a really proud moment for me, and I got to work with a couple of my idols in the speaking world, and yeah, it was a really big thing walking out on that stage to a theatre filled with people, and with so many people who are quite fond to me in the audience as well, which was absolutely lovely. So that was one of the moments that I will never forget. So the guys at BE Group were amazing, and I'll be honest with you, the event that I'm helping to run on the 23rd of March, the West London Business Show, I pinched a few of the speakers from that lineup purely because there was a few articles written after the Made Festival when it was voted number 4 in the world that year as the 4th best entrepreneurs event in the world, and in the UK it was number 1. So it was amazing, and it was purely on the basis that they had some amazing speakers. So I've actually managed to convince JB Gill to get involved with our show as well. We had Nigel Risner, who's doing some video stuff for us as well. But there's just some amazing speakers, and the last time we all got together, it was record breaking. So this show at the moment is my next biggest challenge and biggest achievement, really, because I've run smaller training and workshop type events before, but nothing of the scale that I've got up my sleeve at the moment. So it's all very exciting, all very exciting.
It sounds very exciting. I'm really excited for you.
Thank you. Well, hopefully I'm going to twist your arm to come and get involved as well.
So, Anthony, this is just for fun, really, because everyone is very different. So, where would you say you come up with your best ideas?
It's usually when I'm in the car, purely because I end up spending a lot of time in the car driving, and I tend to notice that I come up with ideas in the car because it's then annoying because you have to pull up over to write down a note about it before you forget. So yeah, quite in the car I do quite a bit of thinking and I run through stuff. So for me, that's a good one. But I also think that in mastermind sessions as well, if you surround yourself with people who have also got a business sort of hat on, but they're not necessarily, they don't even have to be in your industry, quite often bouncing ideas off of other people and outsiders will get them to kind of come up with things that almost you can't see the wood through the trees when it's your own business. And occasionally complete strangers or even close mastermind groups can help you come up with these ideas. But if you don't ask for help or opinions, then you're kind of on your own. So you do have to wing it a little bit. But when I have an idea, I tend to reach out to somebody who I think has already done that idea or who might be able to get involved in that idea as well. So quite often I just pick up the phone to people and apologize that it's a random phone call, but say, look, I'm the telephone assassin, this is what I do, I've got this idea of this thing I'd love to do, don't know if you'd be interested in collaborating or talking about this or even just getting involved or just telling me if I'm an idiot and this is something that you've tried before and it's much harder work than I appreciate. And it's amazing how many people are receptive to a conversation, particularly when you're looking up to somebody in that way of wanting their advice, not necessarily their approval, but something along those lines. When you talk up to somebody, they like to speak back, whereas a lot of people tend to come across a little bit too salesy on the phone, and that's when people tend to shut down and push you away or create barriers or occasionally have a bit of an attitude in their tone, shall we say. So yeah, hopefully there's a few ideas there of where my ideas come from, but make sure I always wander around. I've got my notepad that comes absolutely everywhere with me, so when those ideas come, scribble them down. It's next to the bed every evening just in case.
So, you do come up with ideas sometimes in bed as well?
Yes. I try and do that. Don't look at my phone for 30 minutes or 60 minutes before I go to bed, which I very rarely manage to achieve. But yes, I tend to sort of, just as I'm getting into bed, I tend to sit there with my pad and I'll just write down all of the things that are in my mind, which I may have emailed myself earlier in that evening. I'll have gone, oh God, I forgot to phone somebody, or I need to do this tomorrow, and I'll send myself a quick email. And then when I sit into bed, I just do a bit of a mind dump down onto some paper, because that will often, after 5 minutes of sitting there, something else might come to light. And that way I tend to get most of it down, whereas if I don't do that, I could be lay there for 10 minutes and then all of a sudden you kind of go, oh God, I was supposed to email so-and-so. Oh, and it will play on your mind, and you then either need to do something about it. So if you've got your pad there, you can scribble it off, but if you've already put it on your list, it's not going to stop you from sleeping.
Amazing. I like that.
There we go. Yeah. So a bit sad really, taking your notepad to bed, but it's it's the only way. When there's so much going on as a business owner, you have to spin all the plates, and anything you can do to help you remember, I think, the better.
This is really funny. I actually had quite a few times when I would come up with something,
Mhm.
like sometimes in the middle of the night or just before falling asleep, and I never had a notepad next to me, and I thought, oh, this is so great, I'm gonna remember it, and I never remembered it, and then I put a notepad next to my bed, and now
Mhm.
never anything comes into my head anymore when I'm in
Yeah,
bed.
yeah, and that's it, because you tend to think to yourself, oh God, yeah, I'll remember that, and then a second thing comes and you go, okay, that's two things I need to do tomorrow, and then a third thing comes and you go, oh, I'm sure there was three things. What was this? And yeah, it helps almost your mind rest assured that you're not going to forget that because you've written it down already. It might pop back in, but it won't bother you. So yeah, it was something that I started doing in hotels because they tend to leave a little notepad by the phone, and I just put it there one evening because I was scribbling stuff down. And after 5 minutes, I thought of something and was like, oh, let's scribble that down quickly. But yeah, now I just do it all the time. So yeah, you're already finding that it's working. So hopefully, proof to others that it's worth doing.
So Anthony, throughout life, we come across a lot of people who we look up to and who inspire us. Would you say you have personal heroes or inspirations, and who are they?
Yes, I've got a couple actually. I mentioned mastermind groups earlier on. I've also had a couple of business mentors and kind of coaches to try and help me throughout my business career, I suppose, or business owner career. The first one that really opened my eyes and massively helped me was a guy called Phil M. Jones. He's got a book called Magic Word. He's also one of the speakers at our show. Come and have a listen to him. But he was amazing, and I actually saw him speak at an event, and he was doing what I wanted to do. So this was at the stage when I had run one or two. I'd run a couple of workshops. Knew I wanted to do more speaking. Saw he was speaking similar kind of sales type of topic. Waited for the queue to go down after he'd been finished speaking. So everybody wanted to chat to him and buy copies of his book. So I waited for nearly an hour and just asked him, what books should I read? What courses should I go on? I want to do more of what you're doing. And he just sort of asked me a couple of quick questions and said, we need to speak next week. And then I ended up doing a program with him where there was a bit of coaching with some extra accountability. He got me to set out my stall and own my niche. That was another phrase that came from him. Was stick to the thing I'm really good at and get known for it. Don't just try and do a bit of everything because it pays the bills. Get known for being an expert. Then surround yourself with other experts that you could recommend when asked about these other things. Hence the reason I joined the Professional Speaking Association. He got me to help me to write my book. So up on the wall here, just in there is the front cover of my book that he helped me to get completed. So that was fantastic. He taught me about what he calls the Ed Sheeran Effect, which was a concept that I think a lot of bloggers and that are starting to sort of cotton onto. Is that what he means by the Ed Sheeran Effect is that Ed Sheeran got people when he was early on doing his gigs to film him and use social media, and he massively plugged it. He wasn't worried about owners' rights or any of that. He just said, film me, put it online, and he got such a massive following that by the time the record deals were knocking on his door, he had such a massive audience already, which is what the record deal tends to bring to the table, that he was in a very good position to kind of negotiate and stand his ground. And that's just something that you need to, if you're going to do social media stuff, you want to build a community or a membership base or a subscription base that is interested in you and there's value in what you're going to give them, because I think that's kind of crucial. But the other thing he taught me was I sort of joke and call him Mr. Repackage, and that's Mr. Repackage, because he basically said, you're good at what you do, try and create a product that's for every single budget. So people who can't spend anything, put stuff on YouTube that they can go and see for free, put tips on your website. For those that have got £10 to spend, offer them a book. They can get a lot of your content in one book. If they've got a bit more money to spend, run an open workshop, which I do through some of the chambers of commerce, that people can come onto, that splits the cost of being with me, that if you spend £100, you can come and do a half-day workshop. Then you've got coaching, which is for a bit more. Then you've got internal training, which is a bit more, where I come in and do training. And then you've got speaking that's at the top. So we've got everything all the way along. That means if you want a piece of the telephone assassin, tell me what your budget is and I'll point you to the right thing. So he was brilliant for me, and I referred to him as a mentor rather than coach, purely because he was doing what I wanted to do. He was out there walking the walk, or walking his talk, so to speak, which was lovely. Whereas I think a coach tends to, I always look at the sports analogy here. Tiger Woods has a golf coach. He can't beat him on the golf course, but he coaches him and helps him get better. So I think sometimes an accountability and a coach sort of person can be useful. And I did get a bit of that from a guy called Steve Clark from Eureka Sales, who again has been really useful. I tend to use him as a bit of a sounding board, but he runs a platinum mastermind group, which I've been involved with, which is amazing, and again helps me focus and feel safe in opening up about my business, which in turn gets me the right advice and the right help to move forwards. And then the last person, who I don't want him to know how good I think he is, because he'll get a bit big-headed, but he's a guy called Jeff Ram. And Jeff Ram was the president of the Professional Speaking Association when I joined, and his stagecraft is amazing. His delivery is above everybody else. His content is hilarious, thought-provoking. His charisma and the way he acts at events is just top-notch. He is the pinnacle of what I would would call of the professional speakers out there that isn't a celebrity or owns a multi-million pound company or has been on TV. He's just amazing, and I took every opportunity that I could to work at events where he was on stage too, and there was a couple where I agreed to go for little more than expenses because I knew he was on the bill. But luckily we became really good friends. He helps me. He'd consider himself my friend more than my mentor, but he's somebody that I look up to, and I think that when you find people that inspire you, that are doing what you want to do or doing things to a level that you would like to achieve, I believe you become the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So to go out, and there was a couple of speakers in the early days where I phoned them up and said, do you want somebody to carry your bags? I'd love to come and see you speak. I've heard great things about you. If I come and carry your bags in, can I come to the next event you're doing? And I think it's getting yourself out there and watching people do what it is you want to do and learning from it, I think is the best bit of advice. But all 3 of those guys are absolutely amazing. I still speak to them regularly, and yeah, without them, there are certain turning points. Jeff was the one that recommended me to the Made Entrepreneurs Festival. So hopefully look up all 3 of those people, listeners. They are amazing. They have resources online that are free as well. If you get to see them speak, they are brilliant. So hopefully there's some good ones for you there.
Brilliant, thanks for that. And Anthony, you already shared quite a few like tips and nuggets, but what would be your top 3 tips and strategies for the listener today? I would usually say within business itself, but I guess because you specialize in telephones.
Yeah, so people often, much of what I do is to try and get people more confident on the telephone and try and get them not to hide behind their emails and social media and just talk to people. People often say, oh, is it business to business, business to consumer, so B2B or B2C? And usually I just say, well, it's more H to H. It's just human to human. Okay, just people talking to people. That's all I really do. So 3 main tips that I would typically give is one type of call that most people struggle with because they don't consider themselves to be a hardened salesperson, or they don't want to be a cold caller, is that if you're going to make outbound calls and do lead generation type stuff, then the best tip I can give you is make sure it feels like you're dropping off a pizza menu, because we all get pizza menus put through our door on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And all they're hoping is that it goes into the drawer in the kitchen so that when you're hungry for their services, you reach out and you order, basically. And they've never come and sort of knocked on your door to take an order. That would be ridiculous. And quite often when people make their introductory call, it almost feels like you're trying to take an order rather than just trying to drop off your menu. And if you make it very clear that in this first instance, all I really want to do is drop off my pizza menu, which is basically get on your radar and share with you a success story that hopefully you can relate to, which is a case study or a testimonial of another happy customer who's very similar to you, who thinks I'm wonderful. Have a read what they say about me. If you think I could do the same for you, I'd love to come and have a coffee and a proper chat. Okay, that's all I do in my dropping off of the pizza menu bit. So that, if you can get that across, I think that makes a massive difference to how you're perceived, because people just don't think you're in sales. The next tip I can give you is every outbound call, whether it's a cold call or to an existing customer or somebody you know, I believe all calls should start by getting permission to speak right at the beginning. Okay, so some of us do this already. We might say something like, oh, hi, Svietlana, are you okay to chat for a couple of minutes quickly? Are you okay to talk? Okay, what I typically do is I do a greeting. So I would always do a good morning and a good afternoon and then their name, particularly if they don't necessarily know me. So if I was going to be phoning you, for example, I would go, oh, good morning, Svietlana. My name is Anthony Stears. I was just hoping to talk to you for a couple of minutes, but I'm assuming I've probably caught you at a bad time. So I wondered if there's a better time to call you back. And the beauty of doing that is it's so nice and polite and unassuming that it doesn't set off any alarm bells that say that it's a sales call. So what you tend to find is the majority of people end up saying, well, go on then, Anthony, I've got 2 minutes now. What's the call about? And what you've done there is you've created intrigue into why you have called, as opposed to interest into what you're calling about, because that's what most people tend to do. They launch into this sales pitch. They do this, well, hello there, this is my name and this is my company, and I'm going to speak really quickly so you can't interrupt me, and I'm going to hit you with a feature followed by a benefit, and hopefully I'm going to get all the way to the end of my pitch without running out of breath, and you might say yes. Okay, now this is what I call premature elaboration. This is blurting a pitch over anybody who answers the phone, and it sets off alarm bells that say it's probably a sales call, and they tend to block you, and they try and say, oh, could you send me an email or something along those lines. So if you can make sure you know who it is you need to speak to, okay, and not talk to a gatekeeper, but just keep calling back until you speak to the decision maker, okay, get permission to speak at the beginning of the call. Okay, and the beauty of the permission to speak statement is that usually you get a few people that will say to you, oh, well, I'm just in the middle of something. Can you call me back in half an hour? Can you call me back at 3 o'clock? Could you call me back tomorrow? And they're the people that just tell you when's a good time to call back. But they would usually be the one that if you launched into a pitch would just shut you off and say, oh, could you just email me? I'm a bit busy right now. And that's just their polite way of saying, if I agree to take an email, will you go away? Okay, so if you can avoid that from happening, okay, then that will only benefit you and you'll have better conversations. So they're my first 2 tips. Make it feel like you're dropping off a pizza menu, okay, and always get permission to speak at the beginning of the call. And just for anybody who wants to write it down, it would go something along the lines of, good morning or good afternoon, first name of the person you're talking to. My name is, your entire name, okay, and I would just like to talk to you a couple of minutes, but I'm assuming I've probably caught you at a bad time. So I just wondered if there's a better time to call you back. Okay. Now, the third and final tip is about measuring the quality of these conversations and these calls, because I work with a lot of companies and their KPIs, their key performance indicators, don't always match up. And what I mean by that is that most people that are doing telephone activity, their company or their department tend to measure the number of dials you make, the number of meetings that you book, and the number of deals that you close. What they try to do is relate the fact that if you made 50 calls yesterday and booked 2 appointments, then today, if you made 100 calls, you would book 4 appointments. And for anybody who's had to make lots of calls before, you'll probably know that it doesn't always work like that. So what I get people to do is I get them to create a point system that represents each step within their sales cycle. So it helps them nudge people through their sales cycle on every single call that they have with them. So the generic example I tend to give people is that to score 1 point, you need to know who the senior decision maker is. Okay, you can look this up on LinkedIn or Google, or you can even phone up and say, hi there, who's responsible for X? Okay, once you've got the name, that's 1 point. To get a second point, you actually have to speak to them. You're not allowed to leave them a voicemail. You're not allowed to email them. Both of those things are more likely to decrease the chances of them accepting your call next time than they are to provoke a response. Okay? It is if they don't know who you are, i.e. you haven't been recommended or referred. Okay? But you actually have to speak to them to score 2 points. To get 3 points, you need to get them to agree for you to drop off your pizza menu, which is usually a case study or 2 of somebody similar to them that they can relate to, because let your client say how good you are. That way you don't have to cringe and tell them how wonderful you are. Okay. And it may also include a tip sheet. What you do, you might have some frequently asked questions or some top 10 tips. Give them that as well. It's a nice bit of free value that shows you're willing, you're experienced, you know what you're talking about. Okay. Now, usually this third point is the end of the first call. Okay. Unless it's going really well and they're opening up to you. But usually the first call, and then to score a 4th point, you need to follow up the email that you sent to them, usually around a week or so later. Okay, but you need to just make sure that it got through their spam filter. Okay, and that's what I always ask people, and just checking it got through your spam filter. I'm not asking have you read it, because if you ask have you read it and you haven't, there's an uncomfortable bit there where you will either give me an excuse or feel bad or feel like I'm pushing you or rushing you. So all I do is I just say, just wanted to double check. Svetlana, I emailed you last week. Did the email come through your spam filter? I just want to make sure you got it. Okay. Usually you'll then respond to say, oh, yes, I flagged it, but not looked at it yet. Or, oh, God, I've been meaning to have a look at it. And I'll say, don't worry, I'll leave it with you. But to get to my 5th point, the thing that I would like to do next, Svetlana, is offer you one of my test drives. And this is basically a free way of trying my service out. It's a bit of a try before you buy. It's a way for me to give you some of my tips and advice, for you to be able to put it into practice and see the result. But the condition of me doing it for free and it being a free test drive is that a week or two later, you have to give me feedback to tell me if my advice worked. Okay. So that's usually the steps that I take people through. Is fourth point is I follow up the email. Fifth point is I offer them a test drive, which for some businesses, your test drive is a meeting. It's you going to see them. It's a free consultation. It could be providing a free quote. It could be a variety of things, your test drive. Okay, it could be a sample session or a sample part of your product. Okay, so test drives are great, and if your fifth point test drive is you're booking a meeting, then the point is you need to send a calendar invite to confirm the time of when you're going to go to see them. And for a seventh point, I believe you should phone people 24 to 48 hours before you're due to visit them, just to see if they need to shuffle the time around. Okay, which seems counterintuitive if you've had lots of sales training in the past, but I promise you it's far less annoying and far easier to keep it in the diary in a conversation on the phone and shuffle it than it is to get an email on the morning of the meeting where they send you something that says, sorry, can't make today's meeting, let's reschedule. And then they don't bother telling you when they want to reschedule for, and they avoid your call for 3 weeks. Okay, so that's a kind of a point system that if you concentrate on scoring points, then even when you get to the end of the week, if you haven't achieved your end goal, which might be to book 3 meetings, for example, or do something some number of times, as long as you can see you're scoring points, you can pat yourself on the back and know that you're pushing people in the right direction, because for every step you're getting them closer to the close. And what it also will do is help to identify bottlenecks within the sales cycle. And once we know where the bottlenecks are, you can then reach out to people like me who can do training, or outsource companies that could fill in that gap, that could then do the elements that you're struggling with. Does that make sense? So it's just an easy way of celebrating small wins while you're making your phone calls, because you've only got to score 1 point at a time technically if you want to. Okay, but it just helps you believe you're going in the right direction, that there's something there that's measurable, and there's something there that's useful to tell you where you might need some help, I suppose. So that is something that if any of your listeners want, I can make available through either your online resource. So it's just a spreadsheet template that's got some point systems on there that may be useful. So hopefully, I don't know if I've gone on a bit too long, sorry if I have, but there's hopefully 3 useful tips. Drop off your pizza menu, always get permission to speak, and use a point system so you can track the quality of every one of your calls. And the last phrase I would put to that is, don't count your calls, just make calls that count. It's all about having conversations, not delivering pitches.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like I had a mini sales training.
Well, this technically is like a test drive. This is one of my test drives where I can share some useful tips. And for anybody who's listening to this that wants to go and put this stuff into practice, once you've tried it out, phone me up and tell me how it went. If it didn't go to plan, I can give you a few more tips. If it did and I've solved the biggest problem you've ever had, you can write me a lovely testimonial. Yeah. Or maybe I'll whet your appetite and you'll want to come on one of my sessions or come and see me speak at one of the events that I'm doing.
So Anthony, that was incredible. But do you also did you come across any resources that you could share with us that made your life easier?
If I'm honest with you, I'm one of the worst people to ask that question to, purely because whenever I want to know something, I tend to just pick up the phone and I just reach out to people who I see are doing stuff. So there is a guy called Steve Bustin who I reached out to a while ago. I've known him through the PSA, who's got some really useful links for getting press releases and stuff out. So if you're trying to make some noise, there's a great, and I can't remember the name of the website, so I apologize, but I'll see if I can find it out from Steve. We might be able to add it to the blog or a caption or something. But that I know that a lot of my colleagues and fellow speakers use a lot. No, not really. I kind of keep an eye on what people are saying on LinkedIn and Facebook. When Periscope turned up, everybody was talking about it. When anything new turns up, there'll always be people raving about it, and there'll always be people not a fan of it, basically. So resource areas, I would say go and network or attend events where the right people you want learn stuff from are present, because that's the best way you can do this. And I'm lucky as a member of the Professional Speaking Association. It's basically experts who speak, so there's experts on pretty much everything there. So there's always somebody who can give you some advice, or is at the top of their game, or speaks on that particular topic. So for me, it was probably joining the PSA that gave me the resource. But assuming you're referring more to online tools and things that your members can get. So unfortunately, I haven't really got too many useful ones, because I'm a bit rubbish at that sort of stuff.
Well, resources, like, it really depends on the person. For you, it's PSA. Some people say it's networking as well, or events, and for other people, it's techie bits. So I think PSA will be great. For anyone who wants to speak. That's how we met as well. So it's an incredible resource, and I think also you mentioned before about the masterminds, and that's an incredible resource if somebody can actually or create or tap into a mastermind, because that's the brains of the other people. It's incredible.
Well, the one bit of advice I had recently from a couple of people is not just to have an industry specific one, because that can be useful, because you all know the industry, there's enough business to go around, so you should share and help and learn from each other. But having one PSA with just normal business owners that have a normal type of business, because when we're the product, it's weird and it's a bit different from other businesses, because we're on stage trying to sell our words basically. So but what you were saying about networking, tap into your network and commit to groups as well. I think that it's the regular familiar faces of the groups where are the people that have the strongest relationships, and the more people know you, like you, trust you, easier it is to be able to open up to ask for help, and for them to be able to think of people that they might know could help you as well. So I think networks, talking to the people around you, we're kind of talking the same language really. So that's definitely something that I'd get out there and ask for some help.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing. Anthony, I come across a lot of people who say that at some point in life, they came across a book that changed their life. Did you have such a book? And if you did, what was it?
But I'll be honest with you, I'm not a massive reader. It was probably Phil Jones's Magic Words book that I read that made me go, wow, there's some really simple stuff here. And I'm not belittling the book that he's written, but some of it is just real common sense. And it was one of the things that I thought, wow, what a great resource. Everybody was into it, and it was one of those, it was almost like a product light bulb moment for me, as opposed to necessarily connecting with the content and using it. I quote him all the time, and there's some amazing nuggets in that book. But I think that was probably one of the books that made me go, wow, I've got a book in me too. This is a sort of stuff that, and I've shared it, and I actually bought a few extra copies of his book so I could give them out to people, because I think it's really good. So that's probably one of them. The rest, I don't know if you can't quite see down there, but I'm one for a bit of shelf development as opposed to self-development. So I've got a shelf of books there that I am intending to read at some point, but I tend to distract myself with having conversations with people. So when when an author phones me and says, I've sent you a copy of my book, let me know what you think, I'll go, brilliant, tell me all about the book. Because I want to know from them what it is, as opposed to sitting down. When I'm sitting down, I want to unwind and chill out, or I'm writing my list so I don't forget for the next day. So
what about your book, your own book? Tell us a little bit more about that. Is it already published in print? Can it be found on Amazon?
It can be found. I'll be honest with you, it is the best kept secret in business. You cannot buy it on Amazon. The only place you can actually find it is on my website. I didn't write the book as a way of making money and necessarily creating a product. I did it as a supporting bit of material that would go with my training. So you need to come to the website. It's www.thetelephoneassassin.co.uk. On there you can find a copy of the book. I'll mail it to you. It'll be beautifully presented when it gets to you as well. Hopefully you will like the branding. Most people tend to know me for my accent of pink. But yes, the book has got loads and loads of tips. Majority of the content I deliver in my workshops are all wrapped up in this one book. And anybody who purchases it, implements anything they've learned from it, that wants to talk to me, I'm always happy to take a call. I don't have a gatekeeper if people are worried about phoning me. So as long as I'm not on stage, I will generally answer.
Brilliant.
So,
Thank
yeah.
you, Anthony. Well, you've been in business for quite a while. You speak on stages, you wrote a book, you're doing so great. But what is next for you? What's your next big goal, dream, aim? And if there is someone listening today who could potentially help you get there, who would it be?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really tricky one. I'll be honest with you. My business plan and strategy is not to build a big company and have lots of employees. I've got a couple of assassins who make calls, but I don't promote it or anything along those lines. So I've got no ideas of grandeur in this massive business. What I'm trying to do is elevate, I'll be honest with you, my profile, so that my fee goes up for the speaking gigs and the training that I'm doing. I'm already towards the top end in the training category, but speaking wise, I get awesome feedback from the bigger conferences and the keynotes that I do. I'd love to move more, doing more of that. It's very enjoyable, and quite often at these events I get to run breakout sessions as well, so I can do more interactive stuff as well as the big stage things. So that kind of thing is great. I'm a massive lover of the sunshine, so I've done a bit of work out in South Africa and out in Spain. So anybody who's got companies out there that are using the phone a lot, I can share all of tips around being more engaging, getting more value out of your calls itself. So for me, I love to travel. I'd like to travel to hotter and hotter places. The hotter it is, the more likely my wife is to come with me. So that's always useful as well. But yeah, anybody who is involved in conferences and events that wants a speaker that's kind of refreshing. People tend to see the brand and the word assassin, think that this is aggressive sales tactics. What they later realize is that actually mainly what I teach is good manners, a little bit of structure, and what's been described as advanced common sense. And I just put it in a way that makes it very digestible. I tend to walk my talk in my training sessions, so I make the calls too, and it just, yeah, if you know you've got people who can change or perhaps use some of the more old-fashioned sales tactics that are out there. So anybody who uses the phrase each no is one step closer to your next yes, anybody who gives their teams big scripts or objection handling documents, that kind of stuff, people who encourage their staff to do premature elaboration and launch into these pitches, come and talk to me. I'd love to have a chat with you. I'd love to get involved in bigger conferences. I've not long ago was the opening keynote speaker for the call center and customer service conference and spoken at their annual summit as well. So yeah, event organisers, please get in touch. I work very closely with the Unique Speakers Bureau, who are actually sponsoring our keynote theatre at the West London Business Show. So if you're in that space and can reach out and help in any way, I would love to hear from you. Most certainly, I'll definitely answer the call, don't you worry.
Incredible. Anthony, we are coming to the end of the show. Before we say our goodbyes, is there anything else that you would like to share with us today?
No, not really. Just to each other. It's great to send emails, and yes, you can bounce stuff around the world now using social media. But the best conversations, opportunities come out of a conversation, and there's actually opportunity in every conversation that we have, but it's not always for us. So most of us tend to ignore it. But if you surround yourself with people who are experts that fit in with what you do, quite often you'll find opportunities to pass referrals. And referrals cost you nothing to give, but they mean the world to the person that you give them to. And I think that if we all made effort to pay attention more to the conversation rather than looking for our next opportunity, we would find more opportunities to pass out. And the more you give out, the more you seem to get back. So to everybody who's listening, get out there, network, talk to people, pay attention to what people are saying as well. There's a phrase out there at the moment that seems to be coming up a lot, that people just listen to respond and not to understand. Try not to fall into that category, because once you're aware of this phrase, you'll be very aware of other people and what their intentions are in the conversation itself. And it's not the most polite way to enter a conversation. And if you get your etiquette right, it's amazing what blossoms out of a conversation. So hopefully that's useful. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time to chat today. And if any of your members, listeners, watchers want to get in touch, then I'd love to speak to them and see if I can offer some more help.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this, Anthony. It's been incredible. What's the best way for people to get in touch?
Oh, well, the best way is actually to pick up the phone and give me a call. But most people typically want to have a little look at the website first. So if you go to www.thetelephoneassassin.co.uk, you'll see all of my contact details there. My number's on there. Feel free to phone me. You can send me an email or a message through the website. But if you've got 5 minutes now, then pick up the phone and give us a call.
Brilliant. Love it. Well, thanks so much for sparing your time today with us. I think this was really packed of value, and, really happy you finally made it. I know you've been super busy lately. So thank you again. And I really hope to see you sometime soon in person again.
Oh, you certainly will. Again, thank you so much for today. And thank you, all your listeners out there. I hope when you put this stuff into practice, you see the results.